watching his daughter, his granddaughter, Caitlin Daniels, walk across the stage and pick up that piece of paper tonight. And not that I would be super supportive or anything, but she's headed to Central Michigan in the fall to become a Chippewa. So I was like, yeah, you should go watch her get here.
Well, the meeting was noticed for 6:30, so.
Okay, I will bring it to order then, once I untangle. So at 6:35, I will call the meeting to order. And would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will call the roll. Mr. Clark? Not a good speaker. Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Nixon? Here. Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Truesdale?
Yes.
Ms. Conley is present, and Mr. Hall. I would like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Hall, who is attending the graduation of his granddaughter. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. I would entertain a motion to excuse Counselor Clark if anyone feels so inclined. I don't specifically know where he is, but
Can we do that without an official notice of
we can. It's just if you choose to.
Why don't you wait and see if he comes?
We can do that
You do
too.
it at the end.
Okay, we can.
Thank you.
Then I will call the roll, public forum. The council welcomes and encourages the public to speak during the public comment and public hearing portions of the agenda. However, council policy is to hear the public comment, not to act on the public comment at this time. Concerns brought before the council during the public comment portion of the agenda will be referred to the city manager for action. If after communicating with the city manager, no resolution is reached, the concern will be elevated to the mayor and then eventually to the council for action. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during the council meeting that citizens are allowed to address the council. And we would ask that you state your name and address for the record if you would like us to respond. Additionally, because this is a training session that we're going to be having tonight, we would ask that you limit your comments so that we may participate in the training as fully as possible.
I will try to make all the comments limited. I understand that there was a special meeting called for tomorrow night by Pam Conley and Alan Nixon for the sole purpose of presenting a medallion in honor of Don Merlin. Why was it necessary to call a special meeting when we're having a meeting tonight?
Because we're not doing it at this. But this is a training.
Was that the only day she was available or something?
She needed the festival expo Friday.
Okay, this is the same festival that threatened to sue the city over return logos on public property. The same festival that threatens and continues to threaten the Chamber of Commerce, an organization that promotes Cedar Springs. The same festival that trademarked every possible logo the city used to promote the festival. And the same festival who offered the festival to another community and who lost a $20,000 contribution rather than stop the lawsuit. There is still a cease and desist order, as I understand it, that the city cannot have red vinyl logos on their property. They were instructed to destroy them by that lawsuit, the Red Vinyl Festival, and so they cannot have anything in the city that has the logo on it. So I have not seen the medallion, but since the people on this council, except for Mr. Hopkins, they seem to have a single agenda to promote the Red Vinyl Festival, I think that they should reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, let's put your voice out first. November results take care of those issues. Anyway, I have another issue over the weekend. I noticed that the water turned off or was depressurized or whatever. I know for a certain amount of time there was no water available. I also know that normally when that happens, we get some kind of notification. And I know that when you have too much water in your system or not enough water in your system, you usually take some precautions like boiling your water for a certain amount of time just to make sure you're not exposed to any potential whatever, contaminants, pollutants, whatever. I just wondered why none of that occurred this time. Anyway, that was just a question I thought I'd bring up when I found out there was a meeting tonight, so you guys could find out.
Thank you. We'll direct that to you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the council at this time? Seeing no one, we will move on to the new business. The City Council City Staff Training Session on Open Meetings Act and Parliamentary Procedure.
Yes, as council is aware, we have two presenters that are here. We contacted the Michigan Municipal League for this program to talk about Open Meetings Act as well as parliamentary procedures. And our first presenter is going to be Joe Mathewson. He's the General Counsel for the Michigan Municipal League, and he's going to lead it off with Open Meetings Act.
Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, thank you very much. As staff mentioned, I'm Bill Mathewson, the General Counsel with the Municipal League down in Ann Arbor. I've been at the league for quite a long time. I spent 10 years in our Lansing office as a lobbyist and in fact in the Ann Arbor office, became General Counsel ultimately. And I do a number of programs like this around the state. I was over in the front last week and did a program on LMA and FOIA. And I was talking to Linda, we do have a new FOIA law, or some new provisions under FOIA. I've got a little bit of information in the back of this just because I want to let you know about that. There's some good resources on our website. The legislature has really engineered something this time on FOIA. Luckily, they have thus far this year, but OMA alone. The legislature's in session. Some people would say we're not safe. In any event, I'm here tonight to talk about the OMA, and this is for you, obviously. So if I'm going too quickly or if you've got questions, please ask. Coco has already told me that as she's knitting, she's going to jab me with her knitting. What do you call this thing? Needles. Needles. if it's not going well, so I'll get a hint from behind there. But please ask questions, and I'll try to respond. And can't answer every question. I'm not your attorney. You have a city attorney, and you need to direct questions to him ultimately. That person is by far the best position to really understand your community and really give you precise answers. You should understand the historical context of your questions. So, is that me making noise?
I believe so, yes.
Apologize for that. Another problem with smartphones. Okay, that should shut it up. So, I'm going to get started. I have a lot of images, a lot of slides. I already talked with Thad and Linda, and maybe we're going to cut out the last portion because they're pretty self-explanatory. You kind of go through them on your own. But again, if it's going too slowly, we speed it up. If it's going too fast, we're going to slow down and ask questions as need be. I don't have a clicker. I like to move around, but I'm a little bit tied down to this, so we'll start this way. You have to have an advertisement about the Michigan Municipal Better Communities, Better Michigan. Actually, this is the only slide of advertising that I'll give to you. But we're really passionate about this concept that the municipal staff is. And we try to impress the legislature and the governor, certainly working with the governor, the lieutenant governor, less so the legislature. If Michigan doesn't have strong and vibrant communities, and this is a strong and vibrant community, you're not going to have a good Michigan. It's all about how you guys do at the local level. You can't have a successful state if you don't have good cities, villages, and townships. Okay, end of the ad. See, there's some happy people at a training. That's where you are. Okay, we're going to talk about the Open Meetings Act. It's one of the Sunshine Acts. There are two of these. FOIA is the other, of course. So I wanted to give you a little bit of historical context of why they're called the Sunshine Laws. In 21st century terms, or at least in the last few years, you hear a lot about transparency at all levels of government, transparency. Now, a long time ago, before transparency was related to what you should or you shouldn't be doing in government, you had these acts. Oops. And so let's start with the origins. I'm going to talk about the policy. Policy is very important. If you understand the policy of the OMA, I think you're going to have a good sense of what's right and what's wrong, what's legal and what's not legal. And of course, there are going to be lots of gray areas no matter what. But focus a little bit on the policy. If you get the policy, it'll raise a little flag and you'll say, are we doing the right thing here? And then I think it'll be a good guide for you. Well, you all know LBJ. There was actually, in 1966, a federal FOIA Act. So that was 1966, and that's sort of the way LBJ normally looked, telling somebody something. Well, then there was a transition from LBJ. I Googled images of Richard Nixon and came up with this one that got a vote. It's actually a fascinating photograph. I think that's when President Nixon was president-elect. LBJ had a habit of intimidating people whenever he could, and that's one of the ways he put his hand like this and sort of feel like he's tall and big. And so he's intimidating the new president there. I don't know what he's saying to him, but Nixon looks like he's wondering what he got himself into.
Not entertaining.
Well, and then there was Watergate. This is President Nixon departing from the White House lawn after he had resigned. We all remember Watergate, or many of you do. You may not. But it was a big scandal, obviously. And the point of all this history, putting things in context, is that's how we got the Sunshine Laws. And not just in Michigan, all around the nation. States all over the country passed essentially the same thing. A lot of them were tougher than ours, believe it or not. But they all have open records and open meetings laws. And they were an outgrowth of this guy and the Watergate scandal. State legislatures felt that they needed to do something to control this in their states. They couldn't control D.C., but no one can. So, in 1976, so Nixon resigned in 74, by 76, and again, all around the country, we had an ONA and a FOIA, and it became effective in 1977. So these acts are very old. And this little wonder wasn't invented. We'll get to that. It makes a big difference. Okay, I mentioned the act, the policy, it's imperative. And this is what it says. The basic intent of the act is to strengthen the right of all Michigan citizens to know what goes on in government by requiring public bodies to conduct nearly all business open meetings. That's the way the legislature wrote it. It's very idealistic. But that's the way they wrote it. Remember, the nation was coming out of the Watergate era, and so the legislators wanted to write something and give the public the right to see what you elected officials do. And by the way, as a sort of a slight diversion, you had the public comment portion. Before the OMA, there was no public comment portion. Citizens couldn't do that. It was like a court. You could come and watch the council do what the council did, but you weren't allowed to say anything. OMA, citizens now have the right to address you. That was one of the changes. This is important. You never want to have a judicial body take a look at anything you do, but the judicial view of the OMA is very consistent. Courts look at these acts, OMA and FOIA, and they understand, I think they interpreted them correctly, the way they were written. Now, we may quarrel with the way these acts were written, but they are what they are, and the courts understand, I think, the intent. The OMA is construed liberally in favor of openness. The intent of the act is to provide openness and accountability in government. We do not countenance the use of strained legalisms or evasions to undermine the intent of the OMA. don't like evasions. We'll see in some of the cases. I think courts tend to get it right. And my sense is that they have a pretty good feel for when a governmental body is doing their jobs and trying to do it well, and when a governmental body is trying to get around the act. And they came down hard early on against the University of Michigan and the city of Wyoming in these cases. Okay, the basic requirements. And you probably know all of these. Unless there's a specific statutory exception, for municipalities, there are only 6. All meetings of a public body shall be open to the public. Okay, that's easy. All decisions of a public body have to be made at a meeting in front of the public, unless there's one of those statutory exceptions. Well, actually, no. Actually, the decision, even if you're in a closed session properly, the decision itself has to be made in an open session. Okay, but now it gets a little bit more difficult. All deliberations of a public body, if there's a quorum, and a quorum, that term is a little bit squirrely, we'll get to that. All deliberations of a public body have to be made at a meeting open to the public. All meetings have to be open unless there's a specific statutory exception. The decisions, regardless, have to be in an open meeting. All deliberations have to be in an open meeting. The OMA prohibits public body from voting by secret ballot. However, there are some occasions you can conduct a vote if the council members sign their secret ballots. Coco, if you agree with this, let me know. This is sort of a workaround by some city attorneys. So you can't really have a secret ballot, but if sometimes a particular council member doesn't want to go first, and so you could have a vote that's conducted by writing it down, but ultimately the clerk would announce the vote and each council member and the way he or she voted. So it ends up not being secret. The OMA supersedes local charter.
Can I ask a question? Is that done? Like people write, really? I mean, I spent 6 years on the school board, and this was my 5th year here, and I've never seen that. Like people would vote on a piece of paper and turn it into the clerk?
I haven't heard of it often, but I try to update these materials even every time I give a presentation, and I can't remember. I spoke with one city attorney and said, oh yeah, we, not yours, a different one, and he looked at the slides, and I'm going to be doing a presentation next month, and he said, yeah, you know, that secret ballot thing, yeah, but, and then he mentioned this to me. Coco, have you ever experienced this?
A utility.
Utility?
And they did just what was said. They were voting for people to serve on a board. And they voted, everybody voted on a piece of paper, and then the clerk read aloud the name of the person who was voted for and who voted for it. So it didn't make any sense to me. It seemed like it was just making an extra step. But that was their practice.
Okay.
In my opinion on that, what they're doing in that case, so it's not, each person's vote is not influenced by another member's vote.
You're absolutely right. That is the intention.
That isn't. So you don't know. If you're always going to vote exactly, if you're going to vote exactly the way Robert votes every time, once Robert votes, you know what you're going to do, but if you don't know what Robert did, anyway. So I think that you're exactly correct.
Okay.
Okay. The OMA applies if you have a public body. Please keep in mind that the Open Meetings Act applies to city councils, township boards, village councils, school boards, and committees and subcommittees of any of those entities. It applies to the subcommittees and committees. When it meets with a quorum present, and we'll talk about what a constructive quorum is later, to deliberate toward or render a decision on something on which a vote of the public body is required. Not everything has to have a public vote. So, the OMA applies if you've got a public body which includes a committee and subcommittee where you have a quorum present to deliberate towards or render a decision.
So, to clarify again,
Yes, let's be careful of that, because I watched their meeting, and they said, well, quorum is 4, so we're just going to put 3 on that committee, so it doesn't have to meet the Open Meetings Act. No, that committee just got a quorum of 2.
okay.
So if you appoint a committee of less than your quorum, it becomes a committee or subcommittee and is subject to the Open Meetings Act. It has to be posted and you have to ask for public comment.
Okay.
Now, the good news, in what Coco and I are saying, is that when in doubt, decide it's an open meeting.
Sure.
Notice it and go through the procedures, and you're insulated, you're covered. You've done what you needed to do.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So if a committee is a public meeting, do I as the clerk have to give that committee meeting to take minutes?
That varies from community to community depending on what your charter says. In many communities, subcommittees, one of the members takes the minutes. But that's a decision.
And then we would just submit them to the city clerk?
I would
And
say yes.
would they have to, if it's a public meeting, does it have to occur at City Hall?
No, but
Like we've done them at the school, or like we met at CTA?
no, you don't even have to have your council meetings at City Hall. So I would say, no, you don't have to.
As long as it's publicly accessible
Yeah, if, you know, again, if you're,
and posted.
no, you can't meet in Detroit at the Westin, or somewhere. Yes, ma'am?
Do we have to post it as other meetings?
You should, yes. And we're not trying to increase your workload. So again, a public body includes a board, commission, committee, or subcommittee. A meeting is, so what's a meeting? Convening of a public body at which a quorum is present for the purpose of deliberating toward or rendering a decision. It's not necessary that the public body even intended that there be a meeting. Maybe you weren't going to have a meeting, but you all happened to be at the high school football game. Well, there's two things to say about that, perhaps. If you're all sitting together at the high school football game, what's the public perception going to be? You know, you're citizens. You get to do what you want to do, but just keep in mind that the public might perceive something that you're all huddled together at the high school football game discussing something. Maybe you're talking about whether they should take the quarterback out and put in someone else, but maybe the public won't perceive it that way, so there's perception. And secondly, even if it's unintended, as we'll find out, if you are together and start deliberating towards making a decision, you could have unintentionally, innocently, inadvertently convened a meeting. So you have to be careful. That doesn't mean you should never socialize or anything like that. I had a session, I think, Coco, you might have been there, when somebody said, I never go anywhere when I see anybody else in the council. No. I mean, maybe you don't like them, and that would be a good reason not to see them, but that's not the point. You know, you got to lead your lives, but just be aware of the perception of the public hand. And second, it's not about where you are so much or who you are. It's like, are you deliberating towards making a decision?
So I have a question on it. Like as an example, we have a local community organization called the Community Building Development Team. And they recently invited, I'm not even sure how it happened, the North Country Trail Association to come and speak to them. And we had previously, at a previous meeting, the city had entered into an agreement with the North Country Trail to become a trail, not to become a trail town, but to begin to become a trail town. They asked us to come to this meeting and smile and say thank you and exchange pieces of paper. We posted it as a public celebration event meeting. Like how do we do that if we're asked to attend something?
Well, if you're not going to be deliberating towards making a decision on something that you have to ultimately vote on, then it's probably not a problem.
Okay, because they asked us to say thank you and.
We elected to err on the side of caution and noticed it as a public meeting.
Oh, as a public,
Yes.
as a city public meeting. Right. Well, in that case, that's great.
Okay,
So, again,
but
no-
was that sufficient then? Because then even at that point, the city manager was concerned, because I was asked to speak, that maybe I shouldn't speak, even though we posted it.
No, the concern was that business was to do this memorandum of understanding, and they also had comments. And I cautioned them that don't just have general comments, just keep to that. That was
Okay.
That was my concern, is that they might construe it as more than it was.
And I think, again, construe, which is perception. There's a case towards the end of the slides where I think the township board and there's a planning commission meeting, and there were enough township board members to constitute a quorum, and then I think the supervisor stood up and started making comments, and then so somebody said, wait a minute, you're violating the Open Meetings Act. You've got a quorum of the township board and the supervisor standing up making comments, even though it was at a planning commission meeting. And the court looked at it and and you can look at the slide over, the court said, well, it's okay, it was innocent because there was no back and forth between them. Somebody was just saying something, just making a speech, in fact, offering comments. It wasn't a deliberation.
Okay, so that's the key we should look for if we're asked to come to school things or Boy Scout ribbon cutting things.
You're public officials, you need vehicles.
Right.
Seems to me.
That was my understanding.
Just be careful. If you're starting to deliberate with members of your colleagues on council, and be real concerned.
Sure.
Wherever you go.
Sure.
This is a key court decision. City council engaged in 2 mini meetings where neither had enough council members to be a quorum. The court held that since the 2-day total was enough for a quorum, practice violated the Open Meetings Act. I think this is the Wyoming case. The University of Michigan Regents case and the City of Wyoming case happened pretty quick after these acts were passed. In the U of M case, the University of Michigan literally devised a process to get around the OMA. No doubt about it, they probably admitted it. The University Council at the time probably would have. They had multiple meetings, none of which had a quorum, and they did it specifically so they wouldn't be subject to the Open Meetings Act. They were searching for the university president at the time, and they ended up with one candidate, and took a vote on one candidate that was left. Well, they had obviously done. They made their decision in these mini meetings, and the court said no. And the courts created the notion of a constructive quorum. That is not in the Act. The Supreme Court of Michigan has said it exists, and the point is, even if you've got less than a quorum, if you are having many meetings with fewer than a quorum of your council there, and you start, deliberating towards making a decision, even though you never have a quorum in one place at a time, you can do separate meetings on separate days, and the court can look at that and say, as they did here, and say, no, you are violating the Open Meetings Act because you set up a process to get around it, circumvent it, and you can't do that. And I believe this was the Wyoming case here. And these are some of the, when I said deliberation is key, these are quotes from court cases of what does deliberation mean? Well, it's pretty broad. Any discussion towards a decision. Deliberation includes discussing, which in turn is defined as the act of exchanging views on something. The act of carefully considering issues and options before making a decision or taking some action. So, these are, I think, all Court of Appeals decisions, but that's the way the courts look at it. So they have a broad definition of deliberating. Remember, wherever you are, be careful if you're deliberating towards making a decision. It's a pretty broad definition, at least in terms of what the courts feel. Well, what about consensus building? Can't we just have consensus building? Be very careful. If it equates to decision making, it would fall underneath the Act. Just consensus. We weren't voting, we weren't deliberating, we were just kind of trying to build consensus. The problem is you're elected officials, you're good communicators. That's one of the reasons you were elected. You're good communicators. You want to develop consensus within the community and within the council, but you have to be careful. Because in this one case, if it equates to decision making, it will fall underneath the Act. A round-the-horn process violates the Open Meetings Act. That's from the Attorney General's handbook on the Open Meetings Act. By the way, the Attorney General's handbook, which is online on the Open Meetings Act, I think it's quite good. You've got a hyperlink in the back of the materials there. It's good, and it's common sense. It's written. It's not totally legalese. It's pretty common sense. It's user friendly. I'd have one around the office. AG's open meeting at Hamlin.
Could you expand on what the round the horn process is?
Well, with around the horn, it's in effect a mini meeting process, I think, where let's say the mayor pro tem calls Wally and says, hey, what do you think about this? And then the mayor pro tem calls Robert and tells Robert, Wally thinks we shouldn't get a new fire truck. What do you think? And then she calls Perry and says, Robert and Molly, neither one of them think we ought to get a new fire truck. What do you think? And it's sort of a circular thing, and you're basically deliberating towards making a decision by that sort of exchange of information that way. That's the way I describe it around the horn process. You need to be careful. Now, if Pamela sends out a communication, or if Thad sends out a communication, I got some wonderful graphs you have to look at, because it took me about an hour to learn how to do it. And an IT person to show me. If you're just shooting out information, if Thad sends a communication to each one of you, that's not a problem. If Robert sends a communication to each one of you, that's not a problem. The mayor does. And it's probably not a problem if you send something straight back. But if you start exchanging views,
Right.
and this usually happens via email, because that's the only way anybody does it anymore, then you need to be careful. Because then you probably are deliberating towards making a decision by the exchange of emails. And always look at it, don't hit reply to all. As soon as you start hitting reply to all, maybe Robert only tried to email Molly something, maybe you got it from everybody and Robert wanted to say something to Molly. You hit reply to all, then it's gone to everyone. You're not thinking in those terms, but you're communicating via email with more council members than you wanted, and you started to convene a meeting. You're starting to deliberate whether it's inadvertent or not.
My other bad guy is forward.
Oh. Forward? Yeah.
That's forward and fly all it. Communities into trouble all the time.
Indeed. Almost as bad as when you said something snarky to someone and you didn't realize, you didn't mean to send it to the person who sent it.
Yeah.
You didn't want, yeah. I've only done that once, I think. Very embarrassing. Okay, what is a decision? Well, here's some definitions of that. A determination, action, vote, on which a vote by the members of a public body is required and by which public body effectuates which formulates public policy. So that's a decision. You know what a decision is. Deliberation is really the key, I think. Here's some basic requirements. As you asked about, public meetings need to be held at publicly accessible places. There's something on having it in a residential place. You can do it, but you should never have it in a place that requires someone to gain admission to be there.
Right.
So it should be a public place. Be concerned about the ADA, those sorts of things. Don't put it so far out of town that it's actually a burden for anyone to be there. But a lot of councils will have a retreat. You want to get out of the normal confines. You want to take, go down to Grand Rapids to a hotel down there and have a retreat. If you want to do that, that's not so terribly far away that it would be a problem. Make sure that the public isn't going to go, God, how are they spending our money? But I don't think that's out of bounds. Just be reasonable. Notice it. Public can be there if you wish. There's no reason. What do you agree, Coco?
Yes.
Does not require a meeting to be called in order in a particular fashion. Okay. Persons attending meetings, they can tape record it, they can videotape it if they want, but you can have rules to make sure they're not disruptive. Now, you've got a pretty nice space here. I've been in some council chambers where they're much tighter, and I've heard stories where somebody will be in there with a video cam. Somebody is, this lady was up there making a comment. Somebody will want a video cam. That can be intimidating. So you need to make sure you've got rules that people aren't intimidated or disruptive. But yes, they can be there. They can tape record it. They can videotape it if they wish. When can you toss somebody out? Well, there's a breach of the peace. And the sense I get from the city attorneys that I've spoken with is just somebody being rude or vulgar is probably not enough. Fighting words, that probably is enough.
Okay.
Some communities, if they know things are going to be a little bit hot, it's a nice idea to have in your case, a sheriff's deputy in the room. That tends to cool people down. And if somebody does do something that's really out of whack, an admonition short recess is probably a good way to get everybody's calm down and back on track. You cannot require anybody to identify themselves that just attended. They can attend without identifying themselves. Citizens have an instant
I have a quick question. We are currently webcamming all of our meetings and putting them on YouTube. Do we need to post a notification that we're doing that, or is it expected that that's a possibility?
I don't know the answer to that. That would be a good thing for your city attorney. I have never heard that question, but it's a good one. It's starting to come up in FOIA in the sense of photographs, and police officers now so often have body cams and car cams. In the FOIA context, it's creating a couple issues. One is it creates a massive amount of information that is subject to FOIA. So that's a real double-edged sword. But secondarily,
on YouTube.
Secondarily, the issue that's created is, well, what if a police officer is, we've got a car cam that stops someone or other people? Do you need to then have somebody block out their faces? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. It may not be a good answer yet. I would think the chair could simply say to the audience, we are broadcasting this, or however you're communicating broadcasting it, and just let them be aware of it. I would think that would be sufficient at this point in time.
So that maybe as a statement we should add to the beginning of each of our meetings.
Something like that, encouraging the public.
Yeah, just to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded on webcam and will be posted on YouTube for future viewing to the public.
I think they can if they want to, but now with TVs outside of stores and all kinds of places, and for security purposes, all kinds of people being taped everywhere.
And most of them do have a thing when you come in the door. I think there is a policy or some sort of, like at gas stations and
But the ones that are just on the street, pointing into the street.
Into parking lots, like the school I'm at doesn't have it posted, and we do the parking lot.
So I think it's certainly a polite thing to mention.
Okay.
But I suspect that
It's not required.
It's not required, but we're not trying to just do what's required. We're trying to be,
certainly, I must admit, many communities, of course, are televised. And I've never heard anyone mention that.
okay.
Good point. Google, you gave a presentation in the Republic of Ann Arbor a year or so ago, and they like to tell the story about somebody who was watching at home and got upset about whatever the council was discussing, so got out of bed, in their pajamas, drove downtown and did a public comment portion.
Yeah, go ahead.
No! But that's it. It's different. I didn't tell you, the city attorney told me to pay their own meeting, a conference call. They are contemplating an ordinance that makes it a violation to discriminate against anyone for their political views. Well, obviously, Ann Arbor would never do that, but he's trying to figure out what on earth are they trying to do?
I can't imagine that.
How are they going to enforce it? So anyway.
Like you can't tell, not like somebody because they're a Green Party person.
Who knows?
We're working on it. Okay, citizens have the right to address the meeting, but you get to establish the rules, and you already expressed them. You had your public comment portion at the beginning of tonight's meeting. You said they were limited to 4 minutes. I think that's pretty typical. Maybe that's 10 towards being the max, probably.
That's generous.
That's generous. You can limit each person's amount of time they can speak, but you may not limit the total amount. So if there had been 100 people here, in theory, you could have taken 400 minutes for the public comment portion. Now, a good chairperson is going to manage that by saying, look, we've got 14 people from Elm Street who all want to complain about something that occurred on Elm Street. Why don't you guys get a spokesperson? We'll give you 6 minutes. Nobody's going to be benefited by 14 people from Elm Street all saying the same thing. not even people from Elm Street. So you can work with that, but you can't limit the total amount of time. You can limit the individual's amount of time. If you have a huge crowd, maybe you want to have a rule. You could have a rule on that particular council night.
Yes, actually, just instituted one for an organization recently. They have a rule that says that people get 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 5 minutes. But if there is a large crowd, by a majority vote, they can limit it to 2 minutes.
Okay.
So it's essentially, it helps everybody. Nobody wants to be here till midnight, and again, you don't want, nobody wants to hear a repetition of the same thing. So, I think you handled it, I thought, a good way tonight. You referred everything to the manager. If a question from the public can be simply answered, maybe you would want to go ahead, but not necessarily. What you don't want to do, I would suggest, as a person chairing the meeting, is to get into an argument. And sometimes you got to have thick skin and kind of take it. You got to say, your comments are noted. Thank you. You can take whatever you want in your mind, but that's kind of what you say. Linda would know all these things, but regular meetings, you need to post a list of those at the beginning of the year. Additional posting in regard to a regular meeting is not required. Unless you change something, you don't have to do additional postings. Special meetings, of course, need some special procedures, 18-hour notice. If you do have a change in the schedule, then there are requirements as to when those need to be posted. For special meetings and rescheduled meetings, you have to post them in the principal office, and this is a change, I think, that's within the last year or so, and you need to put them on the website. And it has to be on the home page of the website as well. I assume you folks have a website.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good one.
Hopefully you never have an emergency meeting. Linda's got to keep all the minutes, and she's got to appear at every single subcommittee meeting, no matter where it is or what time it is. They are obviously public records. They must be available for review and copying unless they're closed session minutes. Those are the things that have to be in the minutes. When the minutes must be available, proposed minutes must be available for public inspection within 8 business days after the applicable meeting. The approved minutes must be available for public inspection within 5 business days. They have to be approved at the board's next meeting. So, even if all the conditions exist making something subject to the Open Meeting Act, there are 6 exceptions that are applicable to municipalities. And in those, if it fits with one of these statutory exceptions, then you can have what's called a closed session. And as I mentioned before, the action has to still be an open session. So you can get to a point, but then the actual action needs to be back in an open session. You can selectively include other people. You may want to have a city attorney at a closed session. Maybe you need an engineering consultant, planning consultant. You can have those persons at the closed session if you need that person. You can exclude some people, including department heads, except for the fire chief.
I'm still a little concerned that you've got the councilman and not mind me a fire truck.
I'm sorry. That's only 2. Still have those. This came up in the municipal attorneys have what they call a listserv, and attorneys will post a question and then everybody gets to jump in and offer an opinion. I've got a couple of these in here. This is one of the questions that came up fairly recently. What about if the person that you need excluded from the closed session is a council member? What on earth do you do then? Well, it's kind of difficult. But what if the council member has sued the municipality? That periodically happens. What if the council person, it's a big community, and a real big community, you might have a council person who is an officer of the employees' union, not actually an employee, but an officer. It's a big enough union. They could have somebody who's an administrator that's not actually working, and you're discussing a labor contract. I don't know if there's a case on this, but the consensus was that if there's really a conflict of interest, then to not exclude that person would totally defeat the notion of the closed session. The purpose that you're in a closed session, if it's a contract negotiation or if for some reason a council member is actually suing the unit of government, it really doesn't make sense to have that person in the meeting. And so I think it would make the concept of the closed session a nullity if that person is there. So I think that you could exclude that person. Again, as I say, proceed carefully with the advice of your legal counsel. What happens when a member reveals what happened in the closed session? Well, it's not a good idea. It's actually a criminal violation. If you disclose minutes, if you take the minutes of a closed session and hand those out to anybody else, that is a criminal violation. And there are civil penalties on top of it. So then the question is, aside from the minutes, what happens if you are discussing what goes on in a closed session? Well, does it create any other problems? I would say arguably less. It's a violation of the council rules, most likely. It would be a violation of Robert's Rules of Order, correct? It would be, if you have an ethics ordinance or if you have an ethics provision in your city charter, it would likely violate both of those. Violates the Robert's Rules of Order for sure. If you have an oath of office, it probably is a violation of your oath of office. And it's potentially a violation of the State Ethics Act. And aside from all the legalities, I would argue, you would know better than I, because there are real live elected officials, but you need to have a cohesive body. You need to be able to trust each other to be effective in your operations and communications. It would seem to me that if important things are going from a closed session where you all feel that you can express yourself freely and really, openly get something done, really communicating, if that then gets out and one person is getting undercut by that happening, it would seem to me that it would break down your collegiality and your effectiveness.
And that includes if they talk to their spouses and that sort of thing.
That's tough.
Well, I guess if a tree falls apart and no one is around, it actually make a sound. If it's to your spouse and it literally goes nowhere else, hey, we have to lead our lives. But the cases I hear of are instances where somebody has revealed something in closed session with the intent of creating a problem. What you're suggesting is just that completely innocent. You need to talk about what goes on, and you probably get some lots of good advice.
I have a question.
Sure.
If there's a point during a closed session in which you feel threatened, do you have the ability to say, like, I'm out of here, or I'm done, or I'm opening this up, or, like, I've been in that situation.
Well, I'll get to calling it and closing it. I mean, there is a procedure on how you leave a closed session. And I guess, there isn't a sergeant at arms, presumably. So
Right.
you as one member of council could physically leave.
Okay, like that's not like you can do that. You can say, if you're going to threaten me, I'm walking out.
In the Vassar case, wasn't there one member who did do that?
I don't recall.
I think there was one member, once they started on a conversation which was not permissible, got up and left.
Oh.
No, I'm not saying not permissible. I'm saying threatening.
Well, I'm just saying.
In general.
In general.
Okay.
In general.
Now, picking up on Coco said, I have heard more than one city attorney say, if the council goes into closed session properly, but again, you guys want to get things done and you start to talk and try to make decisions. If you go beyond what you're in the closed session for, I have had city attorneys tell me that they have gotten up and said, I cannot be at this closed session, and they will walk out, which is not a good thing to happen. In regard to, if you feel threatened, then you need to do what you need to be safe. And then the question is, if you feel that way, would there be a majority on council that would say, we need to leave closed session because there's an issue here? and then, there'd be a motion, and we'll get to how you get out, yes, sir, get out of closed session.
Can we back up just one step?
Sure.
Going into a closed session, who can call a closed session?
Just a second, I think I've got it. When they get to those
You're,
slides.
you're coming up to that.
Yes,
Wonderful.
and hopefully with enough specificity, but if not, then
Okay.
we'll get to it. Okay, here's my first attempt at humor. This is our media. They are helping you with transparency. There they are, with their microphones ready. Well, I guess I go through the 6 reasons before I get to the calling it and closing. Hopefully my thumb hasn't, my finger hasn't gone too far. We'll get to that. It's not okay. These are the 6 relevant reasons for having a closed session. The first is, if requested by the named person and if the council agrees, and it's 2, both sides, you can discuss a dismissal, suspension, discipline, those sorts of personnel issues. I think this makes sense. You would assume that the person that may be disciplined or hear complaints about a person, you would assume that that person would want that to occur in a closed session, not in an open session. So it's logical, it makes sense. But it needs to be requested by that person, and the council has the option. So it takes both sides to want it to be in closed session. Now, what if an employee's contract requires it? I don't know if there's a case on this. That's why I say an answer. Again, this is off the listserv. If there's a clause in the contract, I would say that unless it's waived by the individual, you probably need to be in closed session. So if an employee has in his or her contract something that any disciplinary action will be discussed in the closed session of the council, you probably need to do it in closed session because otherwise there may be a damages claim in the contract. Check with your city attorney to make sure, but I think at least that's an answer. So again, this is for where there's a dismissal, suspension, discipline, complaints or charges brought against or to consider public personnel evaluation of a public officer or employee, a public officer or employee. If requested by that person and the council agrees, you can do this in closed session.
And just to clarify on that, is there any different laws, and we don't encounter this much here, but with minors? I know when I was on the school board, like, for example, if we were to expel a student, we would offer to the student and the family, we would say, if you would like to go into closed session to discuss this, here is the thing we would like you to sign to request it. And if you don't request it, we're going to be in open session.
Unless I'm missing it, I think that sounds the same. The person's requesting it.
Right. But there was one time when a parent said, no, and we were very, because we were talking about a minor. And so it was, I don't know, we were unsure about the territory we were on.
Yeah. Call the stuff the chop. You've done it again.
Okay.
I don't know. That would be tough, and that's tough.
And the parent was under the influence, and it was just a very difficult situation.
Well, I have heard of instances in municipalities where the person that complaints were about the discipline, they said, no, I don't want this in closed session. They thought that they could embarrass the whole council, and so they refused to be in closed session. I don't know if that
Which
worked.
is their call, right?
It's their call. Now, it will intend to inhibit the council members probably, which is maybe what they wanted to intend. In this instance, they thought that they had more public support than the council did, and so they were trying to put the spotlight on the council. I don't know if it worked or not.
I don't know whether you're aware the reason that you're here started about 3 years ago. I was the culprit, and you probably don't remember speaking with me at Lansing at the coffee bar one evening. I had just been elected mayor, and I was called into closed session, I agreed to it, but I did not call it. And then, you know, this thing is, and that's the reason you two are here tonight, is, of course, the folks that did this are long gone. So, you know, I think among the group here, I don't see this reoccurring because we have learned a few things in the past few months. But you know, you're talking about a closed session and information getting out and so on and so forth that later hit the streets that I was supposedly swore at and asked to step down from my position. Maybe I'm saying too much here. You shut me down if I am, but that's the reason for this meeting tonight is that I think this council realizes that we have done some things in error. We have broken the law, and I'm sorry Mr. Clark is not here because repeatedly he read the law to the former council people. We cannot go there. And it's exactly, you're telling us here, it's the very same thing he was telling us, but we collectively, including the manager, city manager, proceeded with these closed sessions. So that's, I don't know if you have any questions to me or not, but I'm trying to make my questions a little simpler than the Mayor Pro Tem here. She seems to.
That's just so the presenter can get a good understanding of what went on. There was a request made, it was on the agenda. Mr. Truesdale was presiding as mayor. He entertained a motion to go into closed session and accepted a vote, and it was a unanimous vote that he went into closed session.
What's the reason stated?
Yes, the reason was stated.
Is the problem that someone else made the motion?
Right.
Anyone can make the motion to go in closed session.
Yeah, my understanding, ma'am, is at that time I was the only one that could have called for a closed session. And how this came down the pike was the former mayor, who I elected Mayor Pro Tem upon my sitting in that office. We had some differences, and he asked another council member to contact me and ask me if I would be willing to go into closed session to deal with me as a problem. And I felt I didn't know that I was a problem and didn't mean to be a problem, and so I felt I had nothing to hide. So I guess my question tonight to you two, was that a illegal closed session? I did not ask for it. I mean, I would just as soon taken the
I think you're asking two questions. One is who can call for a closed session, and the other is what issue can you go in for?
Well, and I think, again, I didn't literally read my disclaimer, but...
Didn't mean to disrupt you.
No, it's a good question. I can give you a little bit of information, but again, you do need to rely on your city attorney for, this is a very specific legal interpretation. I think...
The attorney wasn't present.
Well, but I mean, after the fact. But I think probably what you said would be an expression of consent. So that, back up a slide, again, as Coco says, anyone can make the motion. You need to have a roll call vote. You need to have a particular majority depending on which of the six it is. Anybody can make the motion. Council needs to want to do that, and there needs to be the person who is complained of or whatever needs to consent. I think somebody probably took what you said as sufficient consent to go into the closed session. And so that it sounds to me from what you're saying that it was probably proper. Now, as I think I say in here, oh yeah, the second bullet, the requesting person can rescind the request at any time. So if, let's say, let's put it back in the employee context.